Hello, so what is the typical research cycle? It's fairly simple. It always starts with a question. You need to ask a question first and then do your research. Typically, you do a literature review to see what's been done and what other gaps that need to be filled. And then you will formulate your hypothesis, you revise your research question, and have a think, have a guess on what might be the case, and then design an experiment to test your hypothesis. And then you go on, collect your data, analyze them and interpret them, and then evaluate whether your hypotheses are supported or not supported. And then you start the cycle again. You ask new questions because a lot of times your hypothesis is not really supported or maybe partially supported, and you will be asking why, and then come up with new theories and hypotheses, and then for you to test next. And of course, and if you sometimes, we have a little segue here that you're gonna write papers or reports, and then tell other people what you found. Okay. So now I'm gonna put the research cycle in context, just to give you a concrete example of how it works. And this is my study, one of my studies on words, word semantic size. So what about size? When you start with research, you always are wondering about some questions. Okay, and then we heard about a conventional saying size matters, and that's where the research starts. And we always talk about, okay, bigger is better, bigger is faster. And there are lots of reasons for that. There are evolutionary advantages. For example, bigger things, they can survive in the environment better. So elephants are stronger than, let's say, a mosquito, right? And attracts attention. Bigger things attract your visual attention. So alpha male, they look bigger and stronger, and then they are like the primary targets if you get into a fight. And bigger objects are processed faster in the brain as well. So because of those observations, and you start to wonder, okay, well, what about like words? So words have sizes, and does that size matter? And then you start to ask a specific question. Are semantically big versus small words processed differently? In this particular case, let's say we have a word ocean, is it processed differently from an acorn, which is very small? So you have a general question. This question might have been answered. We don't know. So we need to do the literature review, go inside the literature to see what's been done before. And then we can find a lot of size-related effects being discovered. So size value effect, that's a long time ago. Basically, if you have like 50 cents or 10 cents, the two coins have exactly the same physical size, but the 50 cents always perceived somewhat larger than 10 cents because of the numerical value assigned to it. And they are findings saying the cortical representations of perceived size is different, is influenced by the actual size. So let's say these two balls, they have exactly the same visual size in the picture, but this one is perceived to be bigger because it's further away given the context we have here. And then so this particular ball occupies larger area in your visual cortex during visual processing. Okay. And then we have size congruency effect. If you have two words side by side and they ask you which one is bigger than the other, and it's easier for you to say, okay, zebra is bigger than lamp when zebra is actually presented in bigger font than small font. And it will be more difficult if it's presented this way, where zebra is actually presented in smaller font, but you still have to say this is big, right? And you're gonna do that more slowly. And I also papers showing bigger words that are actually recognized faster. So things like ocean is actually faster. So in terms of reaction time, it's actually faster than acorn. Acorn takes a bit longer to recognize. So now, okay, so clearly big and small words are processed differently. That's what the literature tells us. And you would dive into why do they find this? And in the working theory at the moment, at that time, is that word meaning is represented in sensory information. It's not symbolic, it's sensory information. In this case, it's visual information. So semantic size, bigger words are recognized faster because they are processed faster in the visual system for whatever reason. Okay, so that's the working theory. They don't have to be true, and all you got to do is to test them until you can falsify them or prove otherwise. And then one way to test whether this theory is correct is you ask the question, what about abstract words? So do they have size? And if they have size, do they have a size effect? Size, bigger is faster advantage. And if the bigger, faster advantage is really something to do with the visual system, it wouldn't work in the abstract words, because abstract words like I don't know, love, or I don't know, trust. I mean, you can't see them, so they're not represented in your visual system, right? So you can have further questions: can they have size? If they do have size, are they processed differently? And you start to formulate hypotheses, and you might say, okay, well, bigger words are recognized faster than smaller words, but only in concrete but not abstract words. And this is more of a prediction rather than a hypothesis. Hypothesis like what, how size is represented. So it will be, the current hypothesis will be semantic size is represented in the visual system, and then one of the predictions that you can generate from that hypothesis is, okay, well, if it's in the visual system, then we're going to find size effects in concrete words, but not in abstract words, right? And you can pretty much imagine how the experiment might go. You're going to select a bunch of concrete words and a bunch of abstract words, and then half of them are big, half of them are small, and you have multiple examples of these words in each of the 4 categories. And of course, you might be asking, well, at big and small, I guess I can judge these shark, acorn, and that sort of thing. But in abstract words, how are you going to do that? Well, basically, we ask people to rate how big these concepts are by their subjective judgment, and whether they will categorize it as big or small, and then we pick the really big one and the really small ones. And of course, we also have pseudo words as a comparison, because we're going to do a lexical decision task where you will be presented with visual written words, and then you have to respond to them by pressing a yes button to say that's an English word, or no, it's not a word. And then you're going to time your responses. We're going to time your responses and how fast you respond to each of the categories. And of course, for pseudo words, you always respond. You're supposed to respond no, it's not a word. For all of the 4 conditions we're interested in, you respond yeses with the same finger, same button. So any differences between conditions is something to do with our experimental manipulation, not because like you use a different hand or finger to push a button. Okay. Now we collect the data. In this particular study, we collected 60 data from 60 people, tested it on 220 words in total, so 55 per condition. And of course, in Andrew's units, you're gonna learn how to calculate the power of your study to decide whether 60 people is enough for detecting any sort of differences in any sort of setup. So you will have like an effect size in this particular study. Let's say your size effect, your concreteness effect, and how big these effects are. To detect that sort of effect, how many people you would need to detect that. And you analyze your data and interpret it. So for this, I'm going to get into the specifics, but basically you can just look at the reaction time. These 2 are concrete words, and they're always shorter than the abstract words. So these are the abstract words. And you also have the bigger words versus small words. And if you compare them within category, so concrete versus concrete, this is like plus 14 milliseconds, right? And abstract versus abstract, that's plus, this is 18 milliseconds, right? So as you can see, in both cases, the bigger words are faster than small words. And then what we found is that yes, concrete words are faster than abstract, big faster than small, but no significant interactions between concrete and size. So basically, we didn't expect to find a size effect this big in abstract words. It doesn't make sense if bigger is faster is because it's processed faster in the visual system. because abstract words don't have visual entity. Okay. Now it's the time to evaluate your hypothesis. So the predictions we have, this is a prediction, is bigger words, but only in concrete, but not abstract words. So this bit of the prediction is not really supported by our data. So our data only partially support the hypothesis. In terms of bigger is faster, but also found size, surprisingly also found size effect in abstract words. Now that's the interesting. So now you start to ask why. How could abstract words have like a bigger is faster effect? And then you back to the beginning of the cycle. You start to ask questions again. Okay, well, and how is abstract size represented if it's not visually, right? And by looking at the data, we start to wonder, or maybe it's not represented in visual information, but in something introspective, like feelings and emotion. And then you will start the cycle again. Okay, well, let's test this emotion hypothesis for abstract size. And if bigger abstract words are more emotional than small abstract words, and how will that work? And you start the whole process, and again until you kind of address the questions satisfactorily. Okay, so in a nutshell, that's an example of a typical research cycle.